Are you tired of getting the short end of the stick just for the sake of keeping the peace? Or are you someone that everyone has cut off, but no one's explained to you the reason why? In today's session, we're talking about how to create win win agreements that just may heal and transform your relationships for the future. Are you ready to stop fighting and start loving again? What if I told you that the key to healing your broken relationship can be found at the intersection of law and love? I'm Judge Char, founder of Law for Love, and I restore justice to broken relationships through contract building, restructuring, and legal consulting that helps you convert conflict into connection that transforms your family, your community, and the world. Excited to talk about conflict and what is the good word for you. Welcome to this conversation. And the goal here is to just engage in some thought provoking because conflict is something that is a part of life. It is a part of love. It is a part of how we navigate this adventure of living and loving. And so, prayerfully, today's discussion is going to just get some questions going and help you to practice some introspection and take other things into consideration that I'll be revealing to you about what is actually involved in a win win agreement. So let's talk about what happens in a win-lose agreement first, right? To really understand the power of a win-win. What is a win-lose? A lot of times, and literally what drove so much of a sense of discontentment for me in the legal profession and what people were looking for, why people end up in trial even after attempting mediation. Well, it's because somewhere one or both sides wants to win even if the other side has to lose. But there's a cost for that a lot of people don't think about. There's a cost of that a lot of attorneys do not counsel clients about. And here are the costs. The cost is that in the moment, you're going to feel like you won. You're going to feel like you won and you're going to feel great. But that, just like every other dopamine in life, it fades fast. And what you did to the other person, whether by domination, whether by humiliation, whether by manipulation, will leave resentment there. And as a result, long-term hostility between the both of you will result because there was a loser. And it drives bitterness and in some cases, even vengeance. I received a phone call today from one of my top 5 favorite clients of my whole career. And we had a very interesting conversation about how to let things go. How do you want to live your life when the day comes when one of you has passed away? When one of you has passed away, do you want that loss to come with regret that you didn't clear the air? Do you want that day to come and you realize that everything that you thought about meant nothing in comparison to the pain of death? Well, these are the costs. These are the costs of win-lose situations that too many people have this orientation or this lack of awareness that there's more than a win-lose type of situation. So that for that reason, I want to talk about what the power of the win-win is, as well as how to design a win-win, because depending on who you are, if you're the person who's always giving in, or if you're the person who's always demanding, then What I'm hoping that you'll see in the power of a win-win is your power to help get there and to prevent win-lose situations that are destroying your opportunities for future connection. Because it's a win-win. The primary power of a win-win outcome is space for healing. So as much as you might be tempted to just burn every bridge that conflict touches, and think about most of your relationships. Think of the people you spend the most time with. If every time there was a disagreement you just set fire to that bridge and burned it, okay, what would you be left with at the end of life's journey? Who's even going to show up for your funeral, for real? And when you burn every bridge because there's conflict. And I know that conflict is painful, right? Nobody wants to feel the yuck of a disagreement with another person. We want to like the same things. We want to see things the same way. We want to share values. But what's inevitable in all close relationships is that we're not going to agree to everything. We're not going to see everything the same way. We're not even going to have the same way of going about talking about it. So if we understand that when this uncomfortable thing of conflict takes place, hold on. If we handle this the right way, if we find a win-win, then we together can create space for us to heal our relationship. And as I often say, using this conflict to actually increase our connection. Because that is what conflict is. Conflict is an opportunity for connection. It is an invitation to go deeper into your intimacy. Talk to anyone who's been married more than 5 years, and some of the most horrible disagreements that they ever had actually helped them develop a deeper sense of knowing themselves and knowing each other. Seeing the ugliest part of me in the way that I show up in an argument teaches you something about me and lines that you don't want to cross with me, just like they teach me something about you and lines that I don't want to cross with you. And it helps us both to be more respectful and mindful of boundaries, more respectful and mindful of triggers, right? And that is actually increasing our intimacy. So conflict is not bad, or should I say conflict ain't bad. It's an opportunity. And when we begin to look at it as an opportunity for connection, to convert what we're disagreeing about into something that's going to connect us in a deeper way, then you're either going to be developing one, two, or all of these different connections as a result of your conflict. You're going to be growing in connection with your creator, growing in connection with yourself, or growing in connection with the other person, right? The other person that's involved in the conflict. And that connection is worth the conflict. When you think about this painful thing coming into your life, just like the pressure that creates a diamond, that is what conflict is. It is actually putting a necessary pressure on you to see the opportunity of deeper connection. And again, it could just only be a connection with your creator, a connection with yourself, or maybe all three. Seeing life and seeing a deeper meaning in life, and this opportunity for intimacy. So if nothing else, rather than looking to run away from the pain of conflict, rather than seeking escape, rather than shutting down and refusing to talk about the thing that usually blows up into an argument, I'm hoping for you to reframe your conflict as an opportunity for connection, because it absolutely is. And my outlook on life completely changed when I began to recognize that this thing called conflict that I used to really, really avoid and really, really hate having to deal with, yes, really, really hated it. And when I saw its pathway and its relationship to connection and intimacy, it's been a complete game changer for every aspect of my life. Because pain is not always a bad thing either. Pain ain't always bad either, right? Think about the pain of going and working out. You use muscles that you have been underusing. Myself recently, I found out now that I'm dancing in my dance class with actual dance shoes that I have muscles around my knees that I was unaware of. Right? And then you feel that pain, but it's a gain, right? They used to say all the time in the 80s, no pain, no gain. The pain of working out is good. You feel great, even though it was like miserable getting through your workout. When is this over? When is this over? For some of us, like myself, who really do not like the gym, you want to hurry up and get it over with, but then afterward you feel great that you actually got through your workout, right? Or what about the pain of learning a new thing? Like actually feeling like, oh my gosh, I don't get it. I don't understand what's wrong with me. But pressing through and reading the material again and taking the test questions and figuring it out, that pain of not knowing and the process of learning is a good thing. Just like the pain of being tested and learning how to practice for mastery. This is the journey that most legal professionals and medical professionals and those who are in psychotherapy disciplines, we practice patient after patient, client after client, person after person, one experience after the next to develop a level of mastery. And these things are often very painful because I could tell you that 15 years ago, before ever having my first client, I was afraid. I was afraid of making mistakes. I was afraid that I didn't know what I was doing. I was afraid to make certain decisions without checking in with someone to help me make sure I wasn't committing malpractice, right? And that was painful. But then case after case, year after year, time after time, test after test, mastery came as a result of the pain of using the information and applying it in practical situations that had really big stakes for my clients. And these are just a couple of examples of why pain ain't bad. We seek to avoid pain and we seek to attract ourselves to pleasure, but embracing pain has a reward on the other side of it when we don't give up and we push through. And that's what I want to encourage you about conflict, because conflict reveals our fears. The purpose for conflict is not just to reveal what's different or where we don't get along. It really reveals our fears. Conflict is revealing about you and the other person, whether or not you're afraid of being wrong or proven wrong, right? It reveals about you or the other person, whether or not you're afraid of being hurt. It reveals about you whether or not you're afraid of being rejected. These are pain points that people have, and the conflict comes as a mirror for you to see where you are operating in fear, where you are lashing out in fear. Going back to my beautiful, lovely client, I love you so much. You know I love you, and you know I'm talking about you. She she said to me, she said, I don't think I like people. And I said, you don't think you like people? Yeah. And this and that about people, and this and that about people. And as our conversation went on, I realized that what she was doing, she was justifying, isolating herself, and lashing out at people who get too close to her because she was afraid of being hurt. And so our conversation went into, you're afraid of being hurt. I am afraid of being hurt. But you do realize that since you're afraid of being hurt, you're pushing people away and you're lashing out at people and you're being mean to people with your words. But we're not designed to live like that. Like our maker didn't make us to live in isolation, to live alone, to live outside of community. We are created for connection and interdependence. And so when I'm so afraid of being hurt that I want to prevent the pain of being hurt, I will isolate myself and then hurt myself with the isolation of not having human connection. Can y'all see how self-destructive it is to remain in fear and to act out of fear? But this is exactly what conflict is bringing to us. When we are having differences with someone else, when that tension hits the room, then the tension is highlighting some type of fear. And I like to categorize them as either pride, selfishness, or emotional reactivity. And these things are rooted in the most powerful emotion in the earth, with the exception of love. Love is the only thing that is more powerful than these fears. And so it is with love that we design our win-win agreements. And just a quick contract review. What is a contract? It involves two or more people, the parties. It involves a meeting of the minds. This is where we want to focus for designing and building the win-win. Where can we get on the same page? Where are we using the same words, the same definitions, the same meaning? Where are we designing the same outcome and the same path to get to that outcome? That is where the conflict usually happens. And finally, a contract involves an exchange on both sides, which we call consideration in legal terms. So let's take a look at what's happening in the meeting of the minds, where things are going wrong, and begin to ask, how am I afraid? Begin, if you want to start building win-win relationships, whether you're the person who's taking L's or whether you're the person who people cut off, but nobody has bothered to tell you why you're being cut off. Let me tell you why you're being cut off. You're being cut off by everybody because you are controlling, because you are dominant, because you don't acknowledge where you make mistakes, and you're afraid of looking like you're wrong. You're afraid of looking like you don't know what you're doing. So you push people away because you insist on being right. That is what's going on with you if you are the person who everyone cuts off and no one tells you why. So when you develop the mindset and the value for wanting to design win-wins, for wanting to remain in connection and in community and interdependence with other human beings, ask yourself and acknowledge, what am I really afraid of? And accept the truth. We all have to wrestle with fear in this world. This world is scary. I always like to think about What About Bob? Bill Murray is a riot in What About Bob? The man was scared of everything. And his psychiatrist develops baby steps for everything. For everything he needed to do, he needed to take baby steps. Baby steps to get on the bus. And he's shuffling the little feet. He's shuffling his little feet to get onto the bus. Bob was afraid of everything. And we are all born into a world of fear. We are all born into a system that controls and manipulates our emotion of fear. Most of the decisions we make are fear motivated. Don't believe me? Sit down and really think about purchases that you make and the reason why you make your purchases. A lot of people are making certain purchases because they're afraid of being overweight. A lot of people are making purchases for dating apps and other kind of things because they're afraid of being alone. A lot of people are making certain purchases because they're afraid of going broke. Just understand that fear is such a powerful emotion and such a powerful impulse that we all have. It does you no justice not to have a conversation with yourself about how fear is playing out. And then when you acknowledge it, when you accept it, you can resolve your internal conflict. Because as I teach in the law of diplomacy, you cannot begin to harmonize in relationship with others until you first deal with your own conflict. And when you have not acknowledged what you're really afraid of, when you have not acknowledged what's terrifying you and what you feel like you're going to just take with you to the grave, you could never tell anybody that you're really afraid of this thing. You resolving that fear, you squaring up with yourself and having that honest conversation and accepting that it is what it is how you take the very, very first step to a win-win agreement. And then after you do that, that is when you want to examine the other person's fear. See, a lot of times what we do in conflict, and it's very, very natural for all of us, y'all. Look, I'm in family dispute spaces all the time. We always look and psychoanalyze the other person. Oh, I think my spouse has this diagnosis. I think my spouse is a narcissist. I think. Everybody is looking at everybody else. But when we start with looking at ourselves, resolve our conflict, and just look, you know what? Honestly, right now, I'm acting like this because I'm afraid of being hurt, right? Now, I can take a fair look and have a conversation with myself about what is the other person afraid of? What is it that the other person needs? That maybe they don't have the words to articulate. Maybe they don't even realize that this is an unmet need or some type of emotional thing. And I'm not saying that this is your responsibility. This is just a discovery. This is just a fact finding exercise. In what ways in what ways does the other side think that they are right? This one is gold. If you will take the time to consider how you think you're right compared to how the other person thinks they're right, you are that much closer to finding a win-win with the other person. In what ways does the other side think that I'm wrong? And once again, we're pressing on an area here where many people are afraid because of pride. They are afraid of being wrong. So they rather dig in their heels and insist on being right and someone else did them wrong rather than honestly examining what could I have done differently? What can I have said differently? Now consider how the other person sees your behavior in this conflict. And then designing your win-win, looking at the elements of the contract, right? Two parties, that's you plus me. When we look at the meeting of the minds, then we're looking at I care about your future plus you care about our future. And then you're looking at the consideration I give and take and you give and take. Again, designing the win-win is not about, how can I come out on top? How can I dominate? How can I make you prove you wrong? Or how can I punish you? Many of us, because of our unresolved heartbreak, because of our unresolved issues, because of traumas that we have not dealt with, when a person comes into our life bringing a conflict that reminds us of something we have not healed from, we want to punish them because we have not healed from that place in our life, and we overreact to something that is simply reminding us of what we have not dealt with in the past. And win-wins are never about punishment, but always about give and take. And it looks like this. It looks like you see things the way that you see it. The other person sees things the way that they see it. And there's always, when love is involved, when there's a mutual respect involved, when there's a mutual honor and a desire to do what's right, there will always be a place of overlap where the win lives. Always. I have been working in this space in thousands of disputes, and I can tell you right now that once we start clearing the air of the unhealed stuff, once we start having honest conversations about the stuff that you were hiding and pretending wasn't there, once we start clearing out the clutter on both sides, the win-win shows up in the overlap because this is what you both want. Now, one of the things that we need to also understand about looking to design a win-win is that sometimes some people just rolling in harmony killing behavior. And you have to be willing to have an honest conversation with yourself if you or the other person or both of you are operating out of these harmony killers: pride, where you just insist that the other person was wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. Everything you did was right. You don't need the other person. I don't need you. That is one of the number one most damaging statements that are made in relationships, especially in family relationships. I don't need you. Again, we as human beings were created to be interdependent. So this statement in and of itself, I would call it an anti-Christ statement because it is against our created nature. We are created to live in community. We are created to live independently. So whenever we take the attitude that we don't need others, this is where we are on a slippery slope of pride, where you are setting yourself up to live and die alone, where ain't nobody showing up to your funeral. And I'm telling you right now, and my client will tell you how I got on her today about isolating herself, because when we are outside of community, when we are outside of interdependent relationships, and we want to protect ourselves from ever being hurt again, people are going to hurt you. People are going to disappoint you. People are going to make mistakes. People are going to step on your toes, and it's not always on purpose. But if you're going to live your life looking to protect yourself from ever being hurt by anyone else again, then you are living in pride and self-reliance, and you are damning yourself to live and die alone. And ain't nobody showing up to your funeral. Selfishness is the other one. This is the victim mentality where everyone else owes you something. You're entitled to something. So you would take the position, or the other person would take the position, that it's all or nothing. It's my way or the highway. You want to control everything, or they want to control everything, or I'm going to manipulate to get my way. This is selfishness. And just like pride, it destroys relationships, and it leaves no room for the relationship to heal when you remain, or the other person remains, in a state of selfishness, looking only to benefit yourself and not for opportunities to serve and show up for others, to change your selfish, raggedy ways for the benefit of a relationship. And I'm not talking about changing your personality. Who you are is who you are. I will say it to the day that I stop breathing on this earth. I'm is who I'm is. There are certain things about me and who I am and who I'm created to be that are immutable. I will not change the fact that I'm melanated and I'm female, and that I'm Negro and my hair is kinky. I'm not changing that. I'm not changing the fact that I'm loud and opinionated. I'm not changing that. This is who I am. But I recognize that sometimes I could be a little lazy about certain things. I could find things that are not as convenient for me. I'd rather not do and leave for someone else in my family to do. So if I want to deal with that lazy tendency, then that is my opportunity to deal with my selfishness. If I'm making the distinction here, it's not about you not being yourself. It is about you seeing opportunities to serve others rather than yourself, because we're always going to serve ourselves first. Our human nature is self-motivated, self-preserving, and self-centered. That is our default. And even people, and I would say even much more so, especially people who are always doing for other people, there is a hidden selfishness there that is actually validating your value based on how much you do for everybody else. You're keeping score for how you're doing for everybody else, and it is selfish. And this kills harmony. And then there's also emotional reactivity, where because you can't be honest about your fear, you act up when it comes to your emotions. You're quick to get angry, you'll shut down, you ready to fight, or you're ready to run away or just go numb. This emotional reactivity is also getting in the way of your ability to work through the conflict with the other person. And if you recognize these things in the other person, it is not your job to tell them, oh, you're being prideful. Oh, you're being selfish. Oh, you're being emotionally reactive. No. The key to a win-win agreement is actually being honest about these things in yourself first, so that you're more skilled at recognizing it in the other person and modeling for that person what it looks like to choose love over fear, because all of these things are rooted in fear. And if you're going to show up in the relationship from a place of love and confidence in love, then you are actually teaching the other person by your example what love looks like, by not being pumped by pride, selfishness, or emotional reactivity. And love always wins, even when for the moment you have to agree to disagree. A lot of people feel disgruntled where there's not an immediate relief from the conflict. There's not an immediate satisfaction or pleasure point. Like this unresolved issue is still unresolved. But when you can face the other person and you can say, you know what, I understand where you're coming from. I see how you see it. I heard you and I understand your point. But as for me, and being completely honest with myself and being completely honest with you, I just don't see it the same way. How about we agree to disagree and maybe we can come and talk about this later. Let's give ourselves some time for me to consider your position and for you to consider my position, and let's table this for now. Too many people don't like that as a win-win, but it is a win-win to say let's agree to disagree. You're not going to make me see things your way right now. And I'm not going to make you see things my way. Remember, forcing, controlling, and manipulating, that's going to set you up for resentment. That's going to set you up for breakdown. That's going to set you up for someone trying to get their lick back, revenge. You don't want to ever force a settlement. Sometimes win-wins need to be treated like crock pot recipes. You just go ahead and just cut up all the ingredients of this self-awareness, this self-evaluation of having an honest look at how the other person might be looking at the situation. Put all of that in the crock pot and just put the lid on it and turn it on for 8 hours. Walk away. That is also a win. When you are able to walk away with an agreement to disagree without name calling, without threatening someone to hurt them, without stonewalling, without completely shutting down, that is a win. When you can remain composed and acknowledge that right now we're not going to agree, but I still love you. Because love always wins over fear. Maybe you're not ready to be honest about what you're afraid of. Maybe I haven't developed the self-awareness to see that I'm still trying to protect myself, which is why I can't agree with you right now. But whatever the case is, I'm going to choose love because I know love will win if I would just trust the process. And this is how we get to the win-win. So the mindset and the reminder and the encouragement that I want to leave with you about your win-win agreement and designing that win-win, whether it's at home, whether it's at work, whether it's in the marketplace, whatever type of relationship it is, this win-win mindset is an encouragement for you. No deal. Be willing to walk away. Wait for the best opportunity to harmonize rather than being forced. This is for you if you feel like you get the short end of the stick. You rather just give in so y'all can go back to feeling lovey-dovey. But then you mad. Don't do that. Be willing to sacrifice. Be willing to sacrifice lovey-dovey for something that really does respect and honor your person rather than you giving in to someone who's bullying and who has become used to you giving in. Because that's not serving your future relationship. That's making you more and more angry, resentful, and ultimately bitter and scornful. That's not a win-win. Do not be forced or manipulated. Do not be forced or manipulated. And if you are the stronger willed person who is used to getting your way, who is used to twisting the arm of other people around you, nobody wants to be forced or manipulated. And this is why people secretly hate you. This is not how we heal our relationships. This is not how we grow stronger together. This is not how we build legacy together. This is not what family is supposed to look like. Nobody is supposed to force and nobody is supposed to manipulate. So if you are the dominant character that always gets your way, you may want to have an honest conversation with yourself about everyone who hates you for this kind of behavior, because no one likes being forced, controlled, or manipulated. Be accepting that agree to disagree may be necessary for things to work themselves out for a future table talk. Set it and forget it. Accept that not all conflict is resolved quickly. In many marriages, y'all married folk, you know, there's this one conversation that every time y'all try to talk about it, it just ends nowhere. Like the unresolved conflict. Sometimes that has to happen until each of you have developed spiritually and emotionally and have matured in your self-concept to be able to come back and that thing no longer become an issue. So sometimes agree to disagree is an absolutely necessary path to win-win. And then finally, love is the foundation of courage. You simply cannot lose with love. You cannot lose with love. Love will always beat fear. Love is like the queen piece on the chessboard. It's going to dominate the board every single time. You can't lose. You cannot lose with love. And you can have confidence in knowing that if you are coming into any conflict, any disagreement with any person, I don't care who it is, as long as you don't turn yourself over to the dark side of unforgiveness, bitterness, hatred, and rage, you will find yourself in a win-win situation in due season if you just ride with love and trust the process. I hope that this blesses and encourages you and just, shines a light on some practical things that you can do, whether again it's at home, whether it's at work, whether it's in the marketplace, business situations, wherever your relationships are and wherever it is that you want to show up better and you want to have better outcomes and any kind of disagreements that you're having. I hope that this is like a quick tool guide for you to just stay encouraged and stay the course, because yes, it feels yuck when we are distant because of conflict, but conflict is not bad when you treat it like the opportunity it is for deeper connection. Thank you so much. I love you. Are you ready to always remember this? The destination is love, and the journey is love. And it is love that conquers all fear and transforms our world. Hey, if you were blessed by this content, please like it, share it, and subscribe. Follow us on social media at Law for Love ATL. And we bless you and thank you for all of your support.